Hello, boys and girls. This is Mr. Kizik, and in this video today we're going to be learning about angle relations. Now, I know as I'm doing it on here, the notes are sideways, but that's okay because we'll get through it. All right. So angle relationships here. So there are several different kinds here, and depending on the kind that you have, can help you solve various problems. So the first one we're going to look at here, we're going to go clockwise, are vertical angles. Oh, I'm sorry, adjacent angles. So what are adjacent angles? Well, think of the word adjacent. Adjacent means next to. So adjacent angles are two angles that are next to each other and share a common side. So an example drawing that would look like this is something like this. 1, 2. These two angles right here are adjacent to each other because they are attached to a common side. Next, we have vertical angles. So vertical angles are two angles that are across from each other on intersecting lines, and as it says here, they are always congruent. So what does that mean? Well, think of vertical angles, the letter V, okay? The way I kind of remember it here. Vertical angles look something like this. I got two lines that cross, and then in this case here, 1 and 2 are vertical. They're across from each other. And as it also says, these two angles are congruent. Likewise, we have vertical angles here too. Angle 3 is congruent to angle 4. All right, let's look at another example of a relationship. Linear pair. Linear pair are two angles that are both adjacent to each other and supplementary. They form a straight line. So the only possible example I can have is this, or I can have a little variations of it, but really, I need to have a straight line and these two angles right here. They're adjacent and they're supplementary. Now, we haven't gotten to it yet. That's actually the next one. Supplementary angles add up to 180. So in this case here, the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 equals 180. So, we go here, supplementary angles. So the example, again, we can have this here. But unlike linear pair where they have to be connected and adjacent, supplementary angles, all you just care is that two angles add up to 180. So I could have an angle that's like 120 here and another angle that's 60. And they would be considered supplementary. Complementary angles are angles that add up to 90. So again, same concept. I could have the angles connected to each other and they add up to 90, or I could just have two angles whose measurements add up to 90. So 30 and 60, you could say. Now, students tend to have trouble remembering which is what does complementary mean and what does supplementary mean. We're going to be dealing with a lot of these angles a lot in the year, but for right now, to help you remember, and it's a corny way of thinking about it, complementary angles, pretend I took the C and I drew a line down here. Doesn't that kind of look like a 9? And then right here, we have a 0, so 90. Again, it's corny, but it's one way of remembering it. All right, so those are different kinds of angle relationships that we can have here. Now, the only one that really doesn't have any mathematical equation associated with it is adjacent angles, right? Because adjacent angles just says two angles next to each other, where the rest of these here have to deal with some numbers. So in geometry here, and again, I apologize if this is sideways, but we'll be fine. You need to be able to identify the type of angle based on the picture. Like they won't tell you, you need to be able to identify it. So if you could, just pause the video for, say, minutes or two here. Try these 6 here, and then unpause the video and come back, and we'll take a look. All right, well, welcome back. Just because I don't have to keep going back and forth scrolling, I'm just going to go on the left side first and then the right side. So number 1, what kind of angles are these? So let's go down the list. Are they adjacent? Are they next to each other? No, these aren't next to, they are across from each other, which is definition of vertical. We don't know anything about complementary or supplementary because there's no measurements to indicate 90 or 180. So therefore, we also don't know if it's a linear pair too. Because remember, we're talking about these 2 angles that are labeled right here. These 2 angles are not linear pair, or at least we don't know they are. Whereas for number 3, yeah, these angles are next to each other. So see the difference there between 1 and 3? They're not vertical. Again, we don't know if they're complementary, but we do know they are supplementary because by definition, they are a linear pair. These 2 angles here help form a straight line. And then for number 5, you gotta watch what's going on here. So it's a tricky one. So again, we're looking at these 2. So first things first, they're not adjacent, they're not next to each other, but they are vertical, which means by definition what? These 2 angles are equal to each other. Now, they are complementary. Now, you might be asking yourself, why are they complementary? It doesn't tell me 90 or anything. The reason being is because what it originally had marked here. If this is 90 right here, then these 2 angles, this angle here must be 90. And this marking tells me that these 2 angles are 45, which means this has to be 45 degrees too. And then 45, 45, 90. So by definition, they can't be supplementary or linear pairs either. All right, let's look at number 2. They are next to, so adjacent. Not vertical. They are complementary because, again, if that side's 90, then this side has to be 90. So then by definition, it cannot be supplementary or linear. For number 4, they are adjacent. They're not vertical. We don't know if they're complementary. We don't know if they're supplementary, and they don't form a line. So therefore, that's all we can mark down. And then for number 6 here, they're not next to each other, but they are vertical. And what measurements are these angles? They're 90. So therefore, they're not complementary because, again, we're adding the 2 angles. They're supplementary, and they're not going to be linear pairs. Notice when you did these problems here, an angle can never be adjacent and vertical at the same time. That just contradicts itself. Same thing with complementary and supplementary. They can never be both of those. All right. If you didn't understand that part there, I would go back in the video and look at the notes again and then try these problems again. Otherwise, let's move on. So how do we use this? Well, we're going to use these different relationships to find the angle measures. So let's look at a couple of, just given numbers and, algebra. So for number 1 here, what kind of angle do we have here? Or what kind of angles do we have? If we look, these are across from each other, so these angles are vertical. And what do we know about vertical angles? They are congruent. That means it has to be 112 degrees. Okay, number 2. What kind of angles do I have here? I have complementary angles. And how do I know that? Because of this 90-degree angle right here. So to find the other angle, I take 90 minus 68, which gives me 22 degrees. And lastly here for number 3, what kind of angle do I have here? I have a linear pair because these angles are adjacent to each other and they form a line. So what does that mean? Well, what that means is that they add up to 180 degrees. So what I would have to do is take 180 minus 124, and I would get 56 degrees. Numbers 4 and 5, might be a warm-up problem. So again, look at to see if you understood that. So the other way that they could give you these problems is if they just tell you. So you just need to know what these words mean in order to determine what happens with these angles. So for number 6, for example, it says angle 1 and angle 2 are vertical angles. So what do you know about the two angles? They're congruent. So if one is angle 2 is 105, that means angle 1 also has to be 105 degrees. 7, if A and B are complementary, what do we know? We know the angles add up to 90. So to find angle B, we'll take 90 minus 42, and we're going to get 48 degrees. All right, number 8, the angles are supplementary. So what does that mean? They add up to 180. And we put 90 for this other one, okay? And here we know they're congruent. All right. So to find this angle, we would take 180 minus 64, and we're going to get 116. And last but not least, for number 9, it says the angles are linear pair. So mathematically, what does that mean for us? The angles add up to 180. So 180 minus 113 is going to give me 67 degrees. Okay. So that's when given numbers here. So let's look at what happens if you're given some algebra instead. And we'll do a couple of these here, just looking, sorry. All right. So here, number 10, it says if the measure of angle PQT is 3x plus 47 and SQR is 6x minus 25. So I'm going to label that 3x plus 47, 6x minus 25. Okay, and they want to find SQR. So what do we know about these two angles? What's given to us? They are vertical angles. So therefore, that means that they are what? Congruent. So what do we do with the two expressions? We set them equal to each other. So 3x plus 47 equals 6x minus 25. We do the math. Let's see, add 25, which is going to give me 72, yes. Subtract 3x, I get 3x. And then I'm going to do 72 divided by 3, which is going to give me 24. I want to find SQR, so I plug that back in. 6 times 24 minus 25. Plug that into the calculator. I'm going to get mine here. Okay. And we plug it in, and we get that is 119 degrees. All right. Let's look at number 11. If line segment AB is, and what does this little symbol mean again? It means perpendicular. So if line segment AB is perpendicular to line segment CD, which means they're 90, DCE is 7x plus 2, so let's write that there. ECB is x plus 8. Find the measure of DCE. So what kind of angles do I have here? I have complementary angles, which means what? It equals 90 degrees. So take 7x plus 2 plus x plus 8 equals 90. Now let's do the math here. 8x plus 10 equals 90. 8x equals 80 after I subtract 10 from both sides, and x equals 10. They want DCE, let's still plug that back in. 7 times 10 plus 2 gives me 72 degrees. So you kind of want to treat these problems like a puzzle here, like, you look at it and you say to yourself, oh, okay, that's what it is. So therefore, that's how I'm going to set it up. Let's look at number 12. KNM is 8x minus 5, so right here. MNJ is 4x minus 19. And they want you to find KNM. So based on what they gave you, what kind of angles do I have? These two angles are adjacent to each other and they form a line. So they are a linear pair. Which, if we go back to our vocab, means what? Mathematically, adds to 180. So 8x minus 5 plus 4x minus 19 is going to equal 180. Now we just do the math here. 12x minus 24 equals 180. Add 24 to both sides. And I'm going to get 204. And then I divide each side by 12, and I'm going to get 17. They want KNN, KNM, so plug that in. 8 times 17 minus 5. And that is going to get me 8 times 17 minus 5. Going to give me 131 degrees. Right, so that's basically, ladies and gentlemen, how you would set up these problems. Let me go, and then also too, they can give you, in Word format too. So I'm not really going to do these here, but we could just discuss it quickly. Number 14, if I told you two angles are complementary, what would you do with the two algebraic expressions I give you? You would set it equal to 90. Same if I told you two angles are supplementary, what would you do? You set it equal to 180. And then same thing for number 16, form a linear pair, add to 180. Two angles are complementary, add to 90. Let's see, let's look at a complicated one, possibly. Let's look at 19. Says ray MO bisects angle PMN. The first statement. What does the word bisect mean? Means cut in half, right? In other words, things are equal. Okay. It says PMN is 74, so this whole angle measure here is 74 degrees. OMN, which is the little part right here, is 2x plus 7. And they want you to find the value of x. So, they don't give you an angle relationship here, but it still is a relationship nonetheless, because what is it between these angles? Well, we know it bisects. So if angle OMN is 2x plus 7, what does that mean angle PMO has to be? Yeah, that'd be correct if you said that it would have to be congruent to angle OMN. All because of that word bisect. Oh, great. We have angle OMN, which is 2x plus 7. But we don't have angle PMO, or do we? Remember, they are the same. However, I'm not going to put it equal to 2x plus 7, right? Because then nothing happens with my equation. What's going to happen is, one of two ways you can do this. You can multiply this by 2, and then set it equal to, well, what's the entire angle measure? 74. And then you can go about solving for it. 74 equals 4x, oops, sorry about that, plus 14. Subtract 14, 60 equals 4x. So x is going to be equal to 15. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you work with angle relationships. These new ones here, and then still what we've talked about in the past. What I would like you to try to do, with the notes, and if you can't get it, this is fine. But this is a problem we're going to discuss next class, number 20. Okay? See what you can do with that. And again, go back to the notes if you don't understand something here, and we will be discussing this next class. Yeah, so again, if you got any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to me. This is Mr. Kizik, signing off.